Honourable Member for Newton North Delta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me make it crystal clear. Anything that I have heard my colleagues say on this side of the House, including our critic, at no time have they said we categorically reject CETA. What they did say is, which is what any wise parliamentarian would do, is that we want to look at the wording. We want to see what's in the deal. We will consult with Canadians and engage in getting input. And then only once we've done that, we're not like some other parties that without seeing a bill will say, yay, 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 it's great, we're going to support it. And then live to regret it at a different time. So for me, I think the more my colleagues across the way try to change the channel by giving information that is misleading very, very clearly, I think it does this House and the parliamentarians in here a huge disservice. What we're here to debate today, Mr. Speaker, is a broken promise. It's a betrayal. A deal was made. And let me make it very, very clear that our leader was asked by the Premier of Newfoundland Labrador, beautiful province, by the way, Mr. Speaker. If you've never had a chance to visit it. Not only is the country beautiful, the people are great, but also, let me tell you, the seafood is amazing. Anyway, our leader was asked to take this issue up in the House and to hold the government to account for the commitments they have made. So that's why we are debating today. And, Mr. Speaker, I think I forgot to tell you that I will be splitting my time with my esteemed colleague from Dartmouth, Cole Harbour. And I will be doing that. So that's why we're here today. And I want to start off with a quote. A quote from, let me tell you this, from Paul Davis, Conservative Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. And this is what he said. It really solidifies that you can't trust the federal government. You can't trust Stephen Harper's government. We bargained in good faith. We believed that we had an agreement in place, that we had a deal set. That is the Premier of a province, a Conservative Premier, Mr. Speaker, saying loud and clear and very, very explicitly, there is no reading between lines. You know, it's very, very clear that he does not trust the government, does not trust the Prime Minister, and that he feels very, very betrayed. So once again, why are we here? We're here because I think governments lose their credibility when they break commitments they make. But Mr. Speaker, why am I surprised? Since I have been in this House, since 2011, I have seen over and over again the government across the aisle break commitments. Let me remind you of one that's very, very important in my riding. We had a report released recently that crime is on the rise. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, but we have very low level of policing compared to other jurisdictions around us. And this government made a commitment to add X number of RCMP to the force, and they have failed to do that. So there is another commitment that they broke. But you know, Mr. Speaker, if I was to stand here just to list all the promises that they have broken, I would run out of time. I think all my colleagues would run out of time. Let me also tell you about the commitments we make to our veterans. They're also feeling very betrayed. Let me talk to you about the commitments we made to those who lose their jobs and who pay into a fund in good faith, thinking that their EI is going to be available for them when they are out of work, but due to taking of the money from the EI fund, first by the Liberals, then my colleagues across the way, and then changing the rules, now they find out when they are unemployed, guess what, Mr. Speaker? The rules have been made so hard that they can't even access the support they need. And only today the Minister had to respond in this House to a fund that has been underutilized by billions of dollars Not only that, and this is to create access for those with disabilities, but it appears that a vast majority of that funding is going into conservative-held ridings. Surely, Mr. Speaker, this is not the way we want to run a country. I also want to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to say that this feeling of betrayal runs very, very deep in my riding. I was at a rally on Saturday held by truckers who have been laid off, given notice summarily that they would no longer be given entry into the port. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, some of these truckers have got experience going over 20, 24, 28 years of driving into that port. They brought their families, they brought their children, and it was heartbreaking because they cannot understand, because only last year they signed a deal. They signed a deal, but they didn't realize, and they weren't told at the time, that that deal had some hidden components and some other output that would lead to a massive number of layoffs of people who are trying to make a living. And that, Mr. Speaker, is unconscionable. And Mr. Speaker, if you had been there and seen those little children, and if you had talked to the men who were the drivers or their wives, you would have heard their stories of betrayal. They feel betrayed by the federal government, they feel betrayed by the provincial government. And while they treat this like a hot potato being passed from one level of government to the other, to the port, what they're saying is we want a solution. So here today I'll also appeal to the Minister to intervene here, because I believe the federal government does have a role. It's a port issue. We've got massive unemployment happening all around us, and we need to address these. And we need to have some answers for the drivers who've given good, loyal service, and there is no transparency. You go to work and you get a letter to say your license ends on Monday. That's it. Don't turn up for work. That's just not good enough. And you know, Mr. Speaker, we're seeing more and more good jobs disappearing. And this is something we have to remember, that the fisheries industry is very, very important along our coastlines, whichever coastline we're talking about. And the fisheries support good middle-class jobs in Newfoundland and Labrador. And this government needs to protect jobs and build a fishery of the future. And Mr. Speaker, that's where this commitment has to be lived up to. That's where I'm appealing to the goodness in the colleagues across the way, because I know it's there, and I know they want to do the right thing. That if we've made a promise, we've made a commitment, that we are going to invest in the fisheries and invest in new technologies to do with the fisheries, that we do it. We do it. And let's not turn this into, they love CETA more, we love CETA less, or they don't like free trade agreements, or anywhere else, because to me, that doesn't add dignity to the debate. In order to have dignified debate, let's deal with the fundamental premise. And the fundamental premise that I'm sure we taught our children, I'm sure we all have from when they were little, is tell the truth. When you make a promise, you keep it. When you make a promise, you keep it. And when federal governments, at the level of a federal government and a provincial government, start breaking those promises, what kind of an example are we setting to the country and to our children? So, Mr. Speaker, I know that you have given me the signal. My time is coming to an end. So I will finish on this note. I will finish on this note. We get into a lot of rhetoric. You know, after all, we're all elected officials. But, you know, Mr. Speaker, there are some things that we know are right. And what we do know is right is when you make a promise and you keep it. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? I think the people of Newfoundland, Labrador, deserve that promise to be kept. Thank you so much.